Our stories the mind forgets, but the body, it never does. Some of us didn't just survive trauma emotionally. We survived it physically. In the way we held our breath. In the way we froze at the dinner table. In the way our appetite disappeared or never felt full. In the way our shoulders stayed tight long after the room was quiet. The mind can rationalize. It can explain. The mind can even move on. But the body keeps the record. It remembers what safety felt like. It remembers what it didn't. And sometimes, decades later, it's still reacting to a world that no longer exists. This episode is about that. About the body that carried what I couldn't name. The body that learned to survive before I understood what survival meant. And the slow, steady work of teaching it that we're safe. This is Born Tired, where survival meets healing. A podcast for those of us who grew up in survival mode but are ready to heal and speak our truth. I'm Irene, a cycle breaker learning what peace feels like after years of survival. Every episode is an invitation to rest inside your truth, to feel seen, and to remember you were never alone. This is what it sounds like when silence finally breaks. Before we begin, I want to share a gentle reminder. This episode includes stories and reflections about domestic violence, childhood trauma, and abuse. Please listen in a way that feels safe for you. If at any point you need to pause or step away, honor that. Your well-being matters more than finishing the episode. If you or someone you know is in danger or needs support, you can reach out to the National Domestic Violence Hotline at 1-800-799-7233 or visit thehotline.org for free. Confidential help is available 24 hours a day. And if you're listening from outside the U.S., you can find international hotlines and local resources at findahelpline.com. You are not alone. Take care of yourself while you listen. There's a kind of healing that doesn't happen all at once. It comes in layers, in moments. The small ways we start choosing ourselves after a lifetime of being taught not to. And sometimes that healing shows up in the most unexpected parts of our lives. In our bodies, in our habits, in the relationships we have with things we never thought to question, like food or movement, or the simple act of taking up space. For many of us who survived trauma, the body became the first battleground. We learned to shrink, we learned to numb, we learned to disconnect from the very skin we live in because it didn't feel safe to exist inside ourselves. And for some of us, the body didn't just remember. It recreated the past in real time, through autoimmune responses, through weight fluctuations, through patterns we didn't choose but found ourselves repeating. Today's episode is about that, about the way trauma teaches the body to survive and the ways we learn little by little to reclaim it. Because the truth is, healing isn't just emotional or spiritual. It's physical. It's cellular. It's the slow, steady process of telling your body, you don't have to protect me like that anymore. I'm safe now. For so many of us, our relationship with food has told a story before we had the language for it. We grew up thinking we were picky or rebellious or out of control, when the truth was, our bodies were responding to environments that weren't safe. Some of us stopped eating. Some of us overate. Some of us oscillated between both. And none of it was ever about food. It was about survival. It was about not having the emotional safety to exist as we were. It was about trying to fill a void we didn't create. And as adults, we're left with the parts of the story that stays. The guilt, the shame, the confusion about why our body reacts the way it does, why we crave comfort during moments of stress, why certain triggers make us reach for food, or hide, or shut down, why we can't always control our reactions, no matter how much discipline or willpower we try to force into the equation. But here's the truth no one told us growing up. Your body isn't betraying you. It's remembering for you. It's holding the things you weren't allowed to feel. It's trying to keep you alive the only way it knows how. Even if those patterns don't serve you anymore. This episode is for anyone who has ever felt trapped inside their own body. For those who have battled eating patterns they never asked for. For those who felt shame for something that was always a trauma response, not a character flaw. For anyone healing the quiet wounds the world doesn't see. If you've ever felt disconnected from your own reflection, if you've ever struggled with accepting your body as it is today, if you've ever wondered why food or movement or your weight carries so much emotional weight, you're not alone. You never were. Today we're going to talk about the ways trauma rewires the mind and the body, and the slow, brave, honest work of coming home to ourselves again, of learning to feel safe in a body that has carried so much, of seeing ourselves with compassion instead of criticism, of honoring the truth that healing takes time and patience. There's a part of my story I don't think I've ever really said out loud. How trauma didn't just shape my mind, it shaped my body. It shaped my relationship with food, my weight, and the way I see myself. When I was a little girl, I barely ate. During meal times, I would sit at the kitchen table for hours, just staring at my plate. Everyone thought I was being stubborn, but I wasn't. My body was scared, especially when my grandfather was living with us. My body knew something was wrong before I had the words for it. Eating didn't feel safe. And they would say, "You're not getting up until you finish your food." But I couldn't move. I would just sit there frozen, staring at my plate, and I never ate the food. I would sit there sometimes for hours. After my grandfather was finally removed from our home, something changed. I didn't even know how or when, but suddenly I went from barely eating to eating everything I could find. Looking back, it feels like I was trying to fill a hole inside me. A hunger that wasn't about food at all. It was loneliness, fear, pain no one saw. And that pattern followed me into adulthood. Even now when I'm triggered, I still feel that pull, that urge to eat my emotions instead of feeling them. It turns into a loop. Heavy emotions, running toward food, the shame afterward, feeling out of control, and then wanting to hide. It's a cycle trauma taught me. And the way my weight has gone up and down, it's always been tied to how safe I feel being seen. There's this contradiction inside me. I want to be seen, and at the same time, I want to disappear. It's like my body hasn't always felt like a safe place to live in. Motherhood brought up wounds I never expected. I wasn't able to breastfeed my children, not because I didn't want to, but because something in me shut down. It didn't feel safe in my body. That's what abuse does. It steals things from you that you don't even realize it took. Until you're standing there with a newborn and your body won't let you do something that should feel natural. And then there's the guilt, feeling like a bad mom. When really, I was a survivor trying to function inside a body that still felt unsafe. And something people rarely talk about is how trauma doesn't just stay in the past. It becomes physical. It becomes chronic. It becomes part of everyday life. I have an autoimmune condition that makes me break out into hives, not tiny rashes, full body hives triggered by heat, stress, or even walking too fast. I had to stop running. I can't do any cardio. My body reacts instantly. One day I was running late to pick up my son from school, so I rushed from the car. I started speed walking toward the entrance. By the time I got inside, my face, my neck, my chest, everything was covered in hives, just from walking fast. That's trauma too. It's the way the body learns to panic even when nothing dangerous is happening. It's the long-term effects, the kind that you don't connect back to childhood until much later. Trauma trained my nervous system to live on high alert. And now, decades later, my body reacts as if it's still trying to protect that little girl who didn't feel safe. But here's the part I'm holding on to. I'm learning. Now, when I feel the urge to run toward food, I pause. I sit with the emotion. I let it move through me instead of swallowing it. I'm learning that safety and nourishment aren't the same thing. I'm learning to meet my body halfway, to thank it for surviving, and to show it that it's safe now. This part of my healing has been slow, but it's real. For the first time, I'm starting to feel at home inside the body that carried me through all of it. When I think about healing the relationship between trauma and the body, I always come back to this question. What would my body have needed if someone had protected me sooner? Not what diet I should have followed, not what routine I should have had, but what kind of safety my body needed to feel in the first place. Because so much of the pain we carry isn't about food or appearance or weight. It's about the absence of safety. It's about being forced to adapt to environments it never should have been in. And trauma teaches us that survival is more important than connection, even connection to ourselves. What I've learned is that trauma settles in the body the way dust settles on untouched furniture, gradually, layer by layer. By the time we're adults, the layers are so thick we start believing that the weight we carry, emotional or physical, says something about who we are, when really, it only says something about what we endured. For me, understanding the difference changed everything. It didn't make my patterns disappear overnight, but it helped me turn toward myself instead of away from myself. It helped me see my reactions not as failures, but as history, as echoes of moments my body survived without support or recognition. One of the hardest parts of this kind of healing is accepting that the body keeps its own timeline. We want it to move quickly, we want it to get better, to respond the way other people's bodies respond, to lose weight when we try to lose weight, to stay calm when we're under pressure, to behave like it hasn't lived through what it lived through. But our bodies are honest, even when we aren't. They speak through hives, through tension, through urges to overeat, through shutting down. They speak through the nervous system, the part of us that learned early on that vigilance equaled survival. And I think a lot of us, especially those who survived childhood trauma, grow up with this invisible fear that our bodies will betray us. We don't trust our hunger cues. We don't trust our boundaries. We don't trust movement. We don't trust rest. We don't trust our own reflection. We don't trust ourselves. But here's something I'm learning slowly. The body isn't betraying us. It's waiting for us to show it something different than what it survived. It's waiting for gentleness, for consistency, for patience, for safety. Healing this connection has meant redefining what progress looks like to me. Sometimes progress isn't change in weight or appetite or energy. Sometimes progress is noticing a trigger in real time instead of after the fact. Sometimes it's catching myself before the binge. Sometimes it's sitting with discomfort for an extra 5 seconds. Sometimes it's putting the fork down and asking myself, okay, what am I feeling right now? Sometimes it's choosing rest without guilt. Sometimes it's letting myself be seen even when I want to disappear. It's forgiving your younger self for coping the only way she knew how. And then there's the societal piece. The pressure to look a certain way, mother a certain way, heal a certain way. So many of us walk around carrying generational expectations about beauty and worth that were never ours to begin with. There's often this unspoken rule that your appearance reflects the whole family, that your body is a symbol instead of a home. And when trauma is involved, the body becomes something you protect, hide, negotiate with, but rarely something you celebrate. I think part of my healing now is learning how to celebrate the body I survived in. Not because it's perfect, but because it's still here after everything it carried. What I hope this episode reminds you of is this. Your body is not the enemy. Your cravings are not the enemy. Your weight is not the enemy. Your reactions are not the enemy. They are messages. They are proof that you lived. They are proof that you adapted. They are proof you're still surviving. And little by little, breath by breath, moment by moment, you can show your body what safety feels like. You can teach it that it doesn't have to stay in survival mode. You can let it exhale. You can let it belong to you again. Healing is not about controlling the body. It's about learning how to listen to it. And for the first time in my life, I'm learning how to listen to mine. There's something I didn't understand for a long time. I thought my body was something I had to manage. I thought healing meant finally getting it under control. finally reacting the right way, finally having discipline strong enough to override whatever was happening inside me. But control was never the same thing as safety. And my body was never asking to be controlled. It was asking to be understood. When I look back now, I don't see a girl who lacked willpower. I see a nervous system that learned too early that the world could shift without warning. I see a body that learned to freeze when freezing was the safest option. I see hunger that wasn't about food and fullness that wasn't about nourishment. I see adaptation. The body adapts because it wants you alive. It slows you down when you're moving too fast towards something unsafe. It reaches for comfort when comfort is scarce. It braces when unpredictability becomes normal. It shuts down when staying open feels dangerous. None of that is betrayal. It's survival. The shift for me hasn't been dramatic. It hasn't been some sudden transformation or some grand declaration that now I love every part of myself. It's been quieter than that. It's been moments of noticing. Moments where I feel the urge to numb and instead I pause. Moments where I feel shame rising and I don't automatically agree with it. Moments where I feel my body tighten and I ask, what are you protecting me from right now? And sometimes the answer is simple, nothing. Sometimes it's just a memory. Sometimes it's just an old reflex. Sometimes it's a body that hasn't fully caught up to the present. And that realization changes how I respond. Because if my body is reacting to something that no longer exists, then I don't have to fight it. I can reassure it. I can slow down. I can soften my tone, not just with others, but with myself. That's the part of healing that feels most radical to me. Not changing the body, but changing the relationship. Moving from frustration to curiosity. From shame to compassion. My body carried me through things I didn't have the power to stop. It held tension I didn't have language for. It absorbed stress I didn't know how to process. It adapted in ways that kept me functioning when everything felt unstable. And it's still here, still breathing, still responding, still trying. There's something sacred about that. Not because the body is perfect, not because it behaves the way I wish it would, but because it stayed. It stayed through the fear, through the silence, through the confusion, through the years of not being fully understood. It stayed. And maybe healing is less about becoming someone new and more about finally honoring what stayed. Not demanding that it perform, not demanding that it erase history, just meeting it as it is. If you're listening to this and you feel frustrated with your body, if you feel disconnected from it, if you feel like it's working against you, I want you to consider the possibility that it's been working for you the whole time. Even when the strategies are outdated, even when the reactions feel inconvenient, even when the patterns are hard to break, it's been trying to keep you safe. And safety is learned, which means it can also be relearned, slowly, patiently, through repetition, through gentleness, through presence. You don't have to rush that process. You don't have to prove that you're healed. You don't have to force your body to move faster than it's ready to move. You can let the work be quiet. You can let it be layered. You can let it unfold in small moments that no one else sees. Because sometimes the most powerful healing is invisible. It's internal. It's the shift from bracing to breathing. Before we end, I want to widen the frame just a little. Everything we talked about today lives in the body, but it doesn't have to live there alone. There's something powerful about hearing these conversations out loud, about realizing that the patterns you thought were personal failures are actually shared experiences, that the things you carried quietly have context, history, and meaning. And when we name them, they lose some of their isolation. Healing doesn't only happen in private reflection. It also happens in connection. In being reminded that other people are doing this work too. That you're not the only one relearning how to feel safe inside your own skin. If something in this episode felt familiar, if it put language to something you've struggled to explain, hold on to that as recognition. Recognition creates space. and space allows change to happen naturally instead of forcefully. The work of coming home to your body is ongoing. It doesn't resolve in a single conversation, but conversations like this can be markers. Quiet turning points where awareness replaces confusion. If this brought something to the surface, clarity, grief, or recognition, you don't have to push it away. The body that carried it all is still here, and it deserves your kindness. If this episode resonated with you, please share with someone who might need it. And take a moment to leave a review wherever you listen. Your review helps more people find the podcast and reminds others they're not alone. Don't forget to subscribe or follow the show so you never miss an episode. You can also join me on Substack, where I share weekly reflections and gentle reminders to help you feel less alone on your healing journey. You'll find the link in the show notes. And if you'd like to connect beyond the podcast, you can find me on Instagram at Born Tired Podcast. I'd love to hear what resonated with you. And if you'd like to support the podcast, there's a link there to buy me a coffee. Thank you for being here, for listening with an open heart. Most of all, remember this: your story matters, your voice matters, and you are not alone.